Spin the truth, spin it loud. Turn it up for the crowd. Propaganda for the good. Changing minds like we should. Spin the truth, spin it tight. Shining through the darkest night. If the beat is right and the vibe is true, good propaganda's what we do. Flip the script like a DJ's hand. Got the truth in the groove, let it sweep the land. Not fake news, now this is real demand. Spread the word like seeds in the farmer's hand. No tricks, just facts that inspire the soul. Paint the world with hope, let the colors roll. Break the chains of the lies that take their toll. This mic's a torch, we got a brighter goal. Spin the truth, spin it loud. Turn it up for the crowd. Propaganda for the good. Changing minds like we should. Spin the truth, spin it tight. Shining through the darkest night. If the beat is right and the vibe is true, good propaganda's what we do. They say the pen is mightier than the sword, but a turntable sharper when it strikes a chord. Scratch out the hate, remix the board. Put love in the loop till it can't be ignored. We architects of a better day. Build a bridge where the rhyme pave the way. No puppets here, just words to say. The world can shift when we hit play. Spin the truth, spin it loud. Turn it up for the crowd. Propaganda for the good. Changing minds like we should. Spin the truth, spin it tight. Shining through the darkest night. If the beat is right and the vibe is true, good propaganda's what we do. Turn the tables on division. Crystal clear like high definition. Every word's a small decision. Building up a better vision. From the speakers to the street. Let the message move the feet. When the rhythm and the reason meet. That's when hearts begin to beat. Drop the needle, let the record spin. Knowledge is the weapon, let the change begin. Not about the profit, just the genuine. Wake the masses up from the discipline. Counter every lie with a verified track. Educate, elevate, never looking back. This revolution's got a different kind of tack. Armed with information, got each other's back. Spin the truth, spin it loud. Turn it up for the crowd. Propaganda for the good. Changing minds like we should. Spin the truth, spin it tight. Shining through the darkest night. If the beat is right and the vibe is true, good propaganda's what we do. So keep spinning, This is just the beginning. Truth stays the only way we're winning. Hearts and minds we're rekindling. Keep spinning, Let the good light keep on grinning. Fade to black, but we're still in it. Good propaganda every minute.
What up? What up, Twitch? Welcome to episode 3 of our ongoing series, The Propagandists. The Propagandists. What up, Ivan? What up, Noah? What up, Nightlight, Plushy Jesus? What up, Dojo? What up, bots? What up, lurkers? What up?
You'll be back like before. I will fight the fight and win the war.
Dojo with the 13 months. Say it ain't so. Yeah, and I didn't have desktop audio on, so that was just me singing, right?
You say the price of my love's not a price that you're willing to pay.
Michael. Thank you for coming through with the Prime, straight out of Jeffy's pocket and into mine.
You'll be back like before. I will fight the fight and win the war.
28 months from Ivan _ Neo.
Unfortunately,
Kicking off a hype train.
nobody seems terribly interested in funding my research, but
They really don't.
I will fund your research.
Yeah. That'd be cool.
That'd be cool.
Thank you all for funding my research. All right, so I forgot how we do this. You need to, or I send you an invite, is how we do this. Send you invite, how we do. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. Now, are you streaming, Ivan, or are you just joining the thingy? Invite, yes. Do 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 do. Not streaming. All right. What about you, Noah? Avenue. Hold on, Stampy. Not streaming, just joining. Okay. Finally, Russell. And here come the invites.
Let's see.
We got audio.
Do we have video?
We have video.
Wonderful.
Like a real streamer. Check you out. All right, Ivan. Noah set the bar high, so it's on you. What up, Pharaoh? Everything's the way you do weather. The fun of tech support at the beginning of a stream.
It ain't. I always say it ain't a stream if there ain't no tech problems.
Okay.
And the sad part is, no one has ever argued with that.
You can't. If you've ever streamed, you have to appreciate the fact that they're like, I am. Where will the invitation show up? It'll show up where you get notifications from Twitch. I've been surprised at how well the stream together functionality works.
It's gotten better. It definitely has. It used to be a little bit janky, but then it worked. And then last 2 times I've used it, it was flawless or good enough, whatever
We
you
have
want
a
to call it.
board. Lower your
And we got
shields
a
and
raid.
surrender your ships. We
Nice.
will add your
Ooh,
biological
James from the
and
internet.
technological
Hello.
distinctiveness to our own. Resistance is futile.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
What's up, guys?
All right, so I can delete this message I was about to send in your chat.
I literally just looked. I said, my, it's 7:04. I wonder. There we go. Okay, got it. Sure, chat is on. Okay, awesome, guys.
And we just got a raid from James from the internet. Thank you for that. And so the way that Stream Together works is like all of our chats are combined. In this case, it's just yours and mine, Jim. As the other two gentlemen are not streaming today, but it's a good way to mix communities, right? Like so that people can just chat in whatever stream they're in and it'll show up across the board, which is nice.
Awesome. Well, good to meet you, by the way. Ivan, I watched one of your streams on consciousness you did. I thought this was very interesting.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you too.
Hello. Also, yes, welcome. Hi, I'm Noah.
Noah, good to
Yeah,
meet you,
Noah.
man.
Noah, no gray, whatever. I actually don't care. But just be nice.
So yeah, I've had each of you on the stream before, and we've had conversations. Each of you identifies as a philosopher. So not only did I want to talk with some philosophers regarding this subject matter, but also I got to use a pun, which I forgot to put in the stream title of the Philosopher's Zone as opposed to the Philosopher's Stone. It was going to be funny, but then I forgot to do it. So there we are.
Nice. Hell yeah.
I've got the glasses for it.
Yes.
I forgot to put mine on, but we'll do it naked.
All right.
When we do it live.
We can do it live, yeah. We are doing it live.
So tonight's episode, we are going to be talking about so I haven't really had a chance to bring y'all up to speed as to what the Propagandists show is about. But it's related to the propaganda is something that is used constantly around us. Marketing is propaganda, political propaganda, etc., etc. And I feel like the concept of propaganda, the word, has gotten like a bad rap, right? Like it, to me, and to my way of thinking, it is just a way of trying to sell your product, your philosophy, your ideas, what have you. And I feel like the propaganda has been really co-opted by, certain, let's say, right-wing elements and, so on and so forth. And let's say less savory elements in government. And I think I want to take the propaganda back. And one of the ways that I do that is by talking with folks like yourself to get your feedback, your ideas, and what you think regarding the concept of propaganda and like that. And specifically, because I have philosophers, I wanted to start off talking about the idea of cultural myths, right? Like whether or not cultural myths are something that we need and whether or not they are good. And is it ethical to leverage those cultural myths for, I don't want to say our own benefit, but like for the benefit of others, right? And we can get into the whole idea of, is my idea of your benefit a good thing? So, anybody want to take a shot at that?
Sure.
Fire away.
So I'm just gonna fall down on the side as we can't get away from cultural myths. Like this is definitely something I think we need as humans. It's not that we lie to ourselves, it's that we need background sort of culture to really motivate any projects we're doing. We have to have some idea, and it doesn't matter what it is you think you're doing. If you think you're going somewhere, you have to have some sort of idea of where you came from. And so the idea that like you're going to get away from this in my mind is confused. Now you can make up new stories about what you're going to do, but everyone comes from somewhere, and how you get there is in some sense like, people start off in different places. Like some places people start off are pretty terrible really, and then they get better and they understand where they came from and where they're going. And of course some people start off in like decent places, and then that again affects where they're going. But we're not going to escape our history. Like we're just not going to. And so we can get farther and farther away. We can put a lot of work in and then like learn and get better, but there's no like full escape where you're coming from. I'm sorry, like I don't think you're gonna.
Hmm. Yeah, agreed. Yeah. Ivan, do you have anything to say on it before I jump in, or?
I guess my thought was that um, cultural myths and propaganda are also tools, right? So they can be used for good and evil. And I've been thinking a lot lately about how people can add meaning to their lives by sort of thinking about things that they might already be doing in a different perspective. And I think that is in some ways kind of a form of propaganda, right? It's like it's a bias, it's a perspective. It's a way of looking at things which are true, but which has the intent of sending a message of some kind. So um, yeah, I mean, I see it as a tool. The cultural myths, I think, I agree with Noah, but I also think that maybe like there are many cultural myths which could be taken in opposition to each other, and we're going to be picking the ones that we think are most useful to us.
Real quick tech support note, Jim. It looks like somebody wants you to boost Ivan. The three dots in the corner. If you click those three dots on the stream together window, you can adjust the individual volume of any person.
Oh, I can. Okay. Okay, Ivan. Yeah, I'll turn you up a little bit. Okay. Okay. Awesome. We'll do. Yeah, I was just gonna maybe we'll start with the if we see if we agree with this definition of propaganda. Narrative communication that selectively frames reality to produce a desired belief or behavior in service of either a power, cause, or telos. So, like for me, I don't have a problem with propaganda unless it depends on what it serves ultimately. I think, right? Like I'll use Plato as an example. Who I'm quite fond of. I know I've read a lot about Plato. I've studied him. Where he has the whole idea of like of a noble lie, right? Where he thinks that it's permissible depending upon like what the intentions of the, let's say, propaganda are. I mean, he would use it as a ladder ultimately to kind of leverage people up towards some higher truth, right? But I think that is you know what do you guys think of that definition of propaganda? I think
I'm on Ivan's side. It's propaganda in some sense. All these narrative things are tools, but we are kind of a
Mhm.
tool using thing. And so, as you're saying, it's like to some end. Well, they're tools. That's what we use tools to do. And
Right.
so, it's like I'm broadly in agreement with your position there, but I think I'm
Yeah.
farther closer, a little bit closer to the way Ivan would frame it actually than
Okay.
I would. Yeah, I'm closer to the way Ivan frames it when I think about this. But like broadly, I think we're in agreement that generally we're like well, I guess there's two things here. Where we come from, whatever our history is, like that's kind of like our disposition. And then
Mhm.
second, you said, well, we've got goals and stuff, and we can pick and choose how we use these narratives and stories and propagandas to
Mm.
achieve those. And that is a little bit separate because we have the ones that you kind of rely on, and then the ones you're deploying at any given point, because you might focus on certain narratives and goals. And so it's like there is something slightly. There's two things going on there, I feel. And like I said, I feel like I'm closer to Ivan in the way I think about it.
Okay, I would agree too with it, and it being a tool, certainly. Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
So is it ethical? Is the noble lie I don't even want to say noble lie, right? Like, because you can propagandize without telling lies, but the idea, when you see propaganda deployed, a lot of times it is an ignoble lie, right? Like, they're basically driving for a fear point. They're trying to leverage those kind of emotions in order to achieve goals which are not in the interest of people, right? You vote against your own interests, that kind of thing.
Well, it's in the interest of some people.
Well, yes, but I mean broadly the public, right? The public.
Let's see, right there, my man Globus. I mean,
sir.
whose side are we on? Are we on the people side, or are we on the people in power side? I mean, you get to choose right there whose narrative you like. Now, yeah, it's like I'm with you, but you have to realize that's a choice.
It is a choice, and is it ethical to do that? Is it ethical to use propaganda to get people to go in a direction that at least you think people will benefit from?
I think that question sounds a bit like, are lasers ethical? Like, depends how you use it, so or what the cause is, and people are probably not going to agree on, whether the cause is just. But I don't think intrinsically it's unethical. Let me put it that way.
So let's give it something a little more concrete. The idea of universal health care in whatever form that may take, it doesn't matter. But the idea of making sure that everyone has health care. Is it ethical to use propaganda in order to trick people into siding with you to give them universal health care?
Yes.
You think it is?
That's not philosophy. That's a one-word answer.
Well, I mean, I could jump in there for a second. I guess maybe you could say, I mean, I'll communicate like Plato's idea around like the noble lie, which isn't necessarily just lying to people, but it's more that not everybody's going to have, well, this is my take on Plato's, my kind of turning him around a little bit, but not everyone's going to have the time to critically think about all these things. So maybe it might be better to kind of communicate, not necessarily half truths even, but what would be a better way of wording this? It might be better. It might be better to, well, he for instance, he would use myths and whatnot to try and get the people to go along with his story, right? His lie, and the end goal again would be for the betterment of the people, whether they're able to fully grasp that or not. At some point, they would see the light of what he was trying to show to them. So, I mean, in regards to universal healthcare, maybe not everybody would understand all the ins and outs, the intricacies of it, and how it would work, but that maybe you would employ some propaganda because, in the end, what you think or your government thinks that it's going to be for the betterment of everybody. It's kind of like voting, right? Like you see voting as an example to go, like, we should get everybody out to vote. I mean, really, if you want to be nihilistic about it, does your vote actually mean anything? No, it doesn't. Like my vote, my single vote doesn't mean anything, but you want to still encourage people to go out and vote and create a campaign for voting because collectively all of our votes do matter. And so that would be an example, I think, of like kind of some propaganda, like, oh, your vote matters. Well, no, it doesn't matter really. My vote independently doesn't mean anything. But if everyone thought like that, it'd be a problem, right? And your candidate may lose. And so, that's maybe. So I guess that would be maybe an argument in a healthcare situation. Maybe that would be, maybe you could try and apply that there. I mean, that would be maybe an example of maybe a noble lie. Like, what do you guys think about that? Bounce these ideas around.
I'm on the I don't know very much side of things. I'm not quite Socrates. I know a few things, but the idea that I'm lying to you guys about universal healthcare, saying like I'm saying things that are wrong or I think are wrong. It's like,
Mm.
who the hell do I actually think I am? I'm just trying to push my point. And what counts as a lie and what isn't, like, yeah, noble lie. Like, do I actually really fucking know? I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to curse. Do I actually know what's going on in this world that I'm so concerned about one little narrative that I'm pushing here? And I hate to say this in some sense because that's kind of what we got here in the US, people who are not so concerned about the truth, but I kind of think that is how things get done. And anyone who's going to be like so trying to hewn so closely to what they believe the truth is kind of missing the forest for the trees here. So I'm not so worried about keeping everything 100% like veritable all the time. And yeah, like, go right ahead, make it easier, make people understand, or make people believe it's what they want, even if they don't, what they want is terrible, and then give it to them. I guess was making me think recently about how they interview people about the Affordable Care Act and they think it's great, and then they ask them about Obamacare and they think it's terrible. Well, I mean, if say it was flipped around and everyone was like, oh yeah, Obamacare is great and the Affordable Care Act is terrible, it's like, well, then you could get everyone signed on to the Affordable Care Act by, like, getting them to believe in Obamacare. That would be good in some sense, get more people on healthcare. What, for however you feel about Obamacare, that is.
I would, I guess I can amend my one-word answer. That I do think when I was thinking about that, I was thinking of propaganda in the sense of selectively reporting what is true. In other words, in general, for most decisions that we make, there are arguments or reasons for and against. On almost any issue you can think of, there are reasons for and against, right? And if you are highlighting pros or cons and you're stating something which is true, then that seems more ethical than creating a message which is portraying something that's false, right? So if you craft a message that says this policy is ineffective when in fact it is effective, then I think that is unethical, at least from my perspective.
Yeah,
But
there's an
but
argument there that you want people to be in the best epistemic state, like have the
right.
most information available to them.
Mm.
Can
Yes.
you, because we've seen that fear is a very effective propaganda tool, and can you do good without being ethical in that sense? Like, if I was to scare everyone into wanting universal health care and they all got health care now, can I do good while not being ethical?
Put a little fear of God into them, you say?
Fear something.
Yeah.
What do you guys
I
think?
mean, if I go on this like fear of God thing, like say, okay, you're gonna go to hell if you don't act right, all right? And people are afraid of hell, and so they act right. Now they're doing the right thing for the wrong reasons, I guess, at this point, because they're not doing it because they want to be good people or they are good people. They're doing it because they are afraid of going to hell. In some sense, you have to train people up a little bit, no matter what. Now, this is patronistic as like hugely patronistic. You're just forcing the kids to do what you want and hoping that they'll like grow up right. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure. Like sometimes this is one of these you don't have infinite time and you just gotta do what works. Sometimes you don't always have the benefit of doing things the right way. And especially nowadays when people's lives are on the line, you don't have the benefit of doing things the right way. I mean, I suspect it's always been the case.
I guess another angle, right? I don't think that there is an official philosophical consensus on the answer to that question. But one way of thinking about it philosophically is to think about meta ethics, like what does it mean to say that something is good or bad in the ethical sense? And there are usually three approaches as cited by philosophers. There's utilitarianism or consequentialism, virtue ethics, and deontology. And the consequentialism might be regarded as something like the ends justify the means, right? So if you think that universal health care is an important good and you've lied to the people and now they have something good, then if you are a consequentialist, maybe you think that's okay. But the other two moral systems would generally disagree with that. And I'm of the view that none of the ethical, like the big ethical systems, are actually correct. They're just guides. So if one of these moral systems says, "Hey, you're doing something wrong," that means you should probably think twice at the very least.
Jim?
Yes. Yeah, I would. I'm classically in my channel. I always talk about how I'm a proponent of virtue ethics. At least the part about like leading the life that you think would lead to the best outcome. I mean, like cultivating virtues in your own life, like being the change you want to see in the world. When it comes to trying to apply that to forcing through universal health care, I mean, well, kind of approach what I take on it when I think that I guess you'd have to define like is it an ethical thing to do? I mean, I guess it depends upon who's forcing it through and what ultimately their intentions are, and how do we discern that? I mean, it's a difficult thing to like. I'm Canadian, for instance, so we already kind of have a form of universal healthcare here that functions not as good as it could, but I'm appreciative for it, definitely. You know, and so I guess referencing how things work here, I mean, I definitely would have agreed with instituting that because I think in the end it serves the greater good in terms of like the greater population. Like people are able to afford, or they don't have to go and drain their bank accounts if they get sick. I think generally it creates a higher standard of living for people, and I think the consequence of that is the civilization here is just elevated because of that. I think it's less of a stressor, and I think one of the issues with some of these having this conversation that we have here is that not everybody's afforded the ability to do that because they're so stressed, they're sick, they don't have any money. All those are factors that affect their ability to critically think about things. And so lessening that burden for me is something I think that would end up being a greater good. So if we had like a consequentialist approach to this, I'd say that, well, yeah, I think that in the end, I think that would, the consequences of it would be something I think that are for the greater good for everybody else. But I guess maybe instituting that there would be people that oppose that, and they may not think it's the most ethical thing that you're going to be drawing more money from their bank accounts to do that. So, are you guys? So Globus and no, you're in the U.S. In Ivan, where are you at?
I'm in Chicago.
He's got that Chicago
you're in the
accent.
States too. Okay. I was gonna say, yeah. Okay, so you guys are all in the States. All right. Okay. Yeah, but that'd be my approach to it, I guess. Yeah, I think it would. Would it be ethical? I mean, for me, maybe I'm biased, but I think that in the end, it would be a greater good. But you'd obviously piss off some people in the process of doing that. So yeah.
Yeah, but they're wrong, those people. So
That's why we can we can create an argument for why they would be wrong, I guess, maybe, right? And that's how you try and make the argument that this would ultimately be an ethical thing to do. That's probably the best way to approach it, I would think, would be you'd have to try and you could ram it through, but you'd also in the process want to create an argument that's very hard to argue against as to why this would be a higher good for everybody, right? And if you can expose people dissenting as just simply dissenting for their own selfish need, needs. It's like, well, that's not civilized, right? I mean, taking into consideration everyone else that upholds civilization. So, anyway, you can get into the weeds of doing that, but
But that actually hits on like drawing back to discussions in this country around universal health care and all that. Um, People like, I'm going to take Bernie Sanders because they are a proponent of it and they've had some of the best arguments, you could say, like it'll save you money, you'll pay less, over the course. All the other people are doing it and they have a higher quality of life, all these things. And the facts, right? The truth of it all hasn't been very effective at changing a lot of people's minds. What has changed people's minds is like, oh, you'll lose, control over your healthcare choices and all the other, arguments that are made against universal healthcare. So at some point do you have to come up against the idea that you can take this ethical high road and just communicate the facts and the truth, and you'll just continue to lose forever.
and that's when the noble lie comes in, maybe, in trying to communicate to people that don't want to critically think about it, right? And that unfortunately, there are a lot of people, for whatever reason, that just aren't able to or don't want to critically think about things, and
Yeah,
that's
well,
the great philosophical dilemma, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, there, like, I think it was Cricks said about education. You're talking about critical thinking. These
Mhm.
are all scaffoldings that you would have to build up, right? Like, oh yeah, we could give people logical arguments for universal health care, but before we can do that, we have to fix the educational system in order to provide them with better education and critical thinking skills. And before we can do that, we have to take control of the federal government. And this is the thing, is like, under an ideal situation, is all this scaffolding that we have to build, which means that we're not getting around to actually doing anything for another 100, 200 years. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Well, I think this should. Do you know of a propaganda message that would work
Um,
at all?
I I I don't offhand, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, right? Like, and this is part of the purpose of these conversations, is to try and find like ways of doing it and arguments to be made that can be made in the most ethical way possible, while at the same time being the most, like, they're on the graph, right? We plot the lines. This is the ethics of the thing, this is the effectiveness of the thing, and where do those two lines cross? That's what I'm trying to find. And the more people I talk to, and then chat and everyone else, you know what I mean?
Mm.
There's got to be, I mean, from the politics side of this, and I'm not much into the real understanding of political theory, but yes, you need a lot of education to understand some of the political arguments going on, but it does change the way people view the world. And those sorts of messages, like you've got the Marxists with their whole sort of like Marxist appreciation of things, and they see the world differently from, say, a non Marxist.
Mm.
That message, when it gets through, it really lands to people like, oh yeah, I am being screwed over by the like moneyed class. And then people start to understand that, and that did work back in the day, 100 years ago, when there was the revolutions. That did resonate with the like common people. So were those ethical arguments? I don't even know if ethics comes into it. If you've got a strong enough message, it's like all the people just jumped on it and they had a communist revolution. I mean, however that went, or however you feel about it, but at the time, they didn't know if it was like right or wrong. They just were like, this seems like a new way to go, and we don't like where we were. Granted, there was a czar at the time too, but
Mm.
I feel like worrying about the ethics is already ceding a lot of ground, in that you're like, oh, I'm lying. Well, you don't even know you're lying if you're saying, well, maybe there's a completely different way to go. And maybe if you go a different way, the like you'll see the world differently and you won't understand the values the same. So it's like, was I lying? Well, the whole value system is different. That's kind of what Ivan was saying too. It's like, which value system are you using depends on what you call bad. And if you have a new value system, then it doesn't really matter. Now, of course, I'm not saying just like the truth doesn't matter at all, but there's a lot of wiggle room here. It's like it's healthcare. It's not like it's obvious what is going to happen in the future with different healthcare systems, say in the United States. Does it make sense?
Yeah. I think it's trying to get, that's why we have philosophical conversation, to whatever those objective truths are. Like, what is the best way
Yeah.
to run healthcare? I mean, I did Globus. I used AI to give us a propagandist message. I would see, what do you think about this for healthcare? If you want a single killer line, here you go. Universal healthcare isn't about making medicine free. It's about deciding that illness shouldn't be a financial death sentence. So there's a propagandist kind of, that is very much kind of a
Yeah, no,
propaganda type message.
like the death panel's argument was very effective when that landed. And so by putting in the idea of using the term death, I think in the messaging is solid. Because again, people generally have a fear of death. But now we're back to fear again. Go ahead, Noah, or Ivan.
Well, no,
sorry.
I mean, I was like, that's great. Like, use it. Like, is there anything explicitly wrong about this? What was the AI said? Like, tell me what is false in that statement?
Well, that's something you would have to debate. I mean, I don't know if we're all on board with that. I mean, I'm definitely of that. I would argue for that too. That, I mean, I think that is something that is a greater good to institute something like that. I mean, obviously the downside, I guess, is that it'd be more of a financial burden on some people. But I mean, so I would already argue for this. We could play devil's advocate maybe and try and think about what could be wrong with it. I mean, are there any falsehoods in that statement? I mean,
I guess one thing I want to point out is that neither side is going to put their ad campaign before an ethical committee to decide whether or not they're going to go forward or not. If they had a message, I think if the left had a message that was going to work, they would just deploy it. And, if we're reading the newspaper and go, oh, look, all these states just switched to, a state universal healthcare plan, then we'd probably be like, oh, okay, that's pretty good. Maybe we wouldn't be doing studies on which ad campaigns were the most effective. We just go, oh, this seems to be working, and people like what they're getting.
Well, we have like one of the closest things is like the Romney Care, the thing that Obamacare was modeled after in Massachusetts. So we have an example of that, but why hasn't it spread? And there's political reasons why it's not in Florida or Texas or whatever, but why isn't it in New York? Why isn't it in California or something like that?
I think there is something in California. It's not as good, but I do believe the Californians have something.
Okay.
So it's like, yeah, some people have done it. Why it's in New York? Well, I mean, I think it's us in Chicago for the most corrupt politicians. So me and Ivan me, Globus, and Ivan. This is why we don't have stuff.
What are you talking about? Kathy Hochul is wonderful.
Are you guys all in Chicago?
Mm-mm.
In the Illinois area? Oh, okay.
Two of us are New York. One of us
we're
is
in New York.
Chicago.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was going, oh my God, what are the chances? Okay.
No.
Well, actually, here's something from Digi. Should universal health care include people who make poor health choices? It seems to be where the tax appropriate disgruntlement occurs. Would smoking disqualify you from a leg transplant? I guess it gets into the nitty gritty of like how would it be implemented, but I mean, I guess more fundamentally, maybe Digi, like is it ethical to run through something like universal, healthcare? Like, is it a good? I mean, that's what you'd have to. I mean, is it good to just? I think that's why it's a problem. I guess maybe with democracy too, where endlessly people just you'll have essentially the liberals or the Democrats, Republicans, or the conservatives on one side of the aisle. They'll be disagreeing from one reason or another, and it's just stagnation constantly. And so, like, if you were just going to run it through and bypass, like a vote. I mean, is that what you're getting at, Globus, with it? Like you're going to bypass because otherwise it's just going to stagnate indefinitely.
I mean, maybe like for me, the all ideas are on the table, and I have a problem with both big A and small A authoritarianism, right? Like giving people universal health care at the tip of a bayonet and the point of a gun. It unfortunately I can see the slippery slope that leads to, right? You know, to take the worst possible scenario from Digi's idea there is like, we could just cure lung cancer by just killing everyone who has lung cancer, right? Like, and then no one has it anymore. Kind of thinking, right? Arguments are made around AI in that regard, that if you don't ask the right question, etc. And so I want to personally, right? Like my selfish notions behind the propaganda series and everything. I want people to I want people to make the right choice, and the right choice is the one that I think is correct.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So
this
This
is
is
your narrative campaign. This is the propaganda.
we're helping you create propaganda, essentially.
Yes.
Okay.
but are you seeing like a lot of negative reaction to your campaign in your Twitch chat or something, or
People
like based on ethics, or
hate the word propaganda. The fact the fact that I just use it and I call it propaganda and everything else, they get viscerally upset. Not all of them, but there are some people who don't like the use of the word propaganda, and they want to use other words and things like that. And I don't, right? Like I want to call it what it is. And in the same way, like, Ivan could call it chess, and I could call it, funny night move game. And right, like, it's chess, let's just call it chess, and we'll learn how to play and how to be good at it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a buzzword. I think that's maybe why people usually like I don't do this intentionally, but I instantly think of like Goebbels or like Nazism, like very successful propaganda campaigns that in the end were not aligned to like some higher good. I mean, the intention was deception, right? Not like the benefit of well, I guess they thought it was going to benefit Nazism, but like I don't think objectively that campaign was going to, be a good thing for people or the world. So I think I like as I've said before, it's literally definitionally kind of more of a tool, I think, and like how you choose to use it. And I think so long as it's aligned to some higher good, and we can debate about like what that is and whether it is or it isn't. I don't have a problem with it either, right? I think it depends upon like how it's implemented, and I think that's everything about like propaganda and using propaganda effectively. Again, like the voting thing earlier, like getting people out to vote. I mean, your vote matters. Well, no, but everyone's vote collectively does. And so I like that's a campaign again. Like it's just one anecdote, but that's an example where I think it's perfectly permissible and that's aligned towards something higher. I mean, I don't know if you guys have any other examples, or like that's me reframing it maybe from like how, like I said, maybe it was just brainwashing growing up, but like that's how traditionally I thought of it too. I thought it's always a negative thing, but then you realize you grew up and you think, oh, well, there's propaganda that the American Western governments put out all the time, right? So I mean, is all of it a negative thing? I mean, that's what you'd have to get into, I guess. It depends on the outcome of it, maybe, and that's what you'd have to debate.
well, what do you think of what DCI Bank says about renaming it? Just using the term public relations. Like, is anybody not going to be upset with you using the term public relations if it means basically the same thing?
That is like,
It's all branding.
yeah, we could call it marketing, right? Like we
Or
could
is that
call
propaganda about propaganda?
it really is, man. And that's the thing, is I guess it's part of it, right? Like the truth is, like, and there's, I run in a bunch of circles that, you know, have a lot of various shades of leftist in there, and some of them are fans of, you know, the Russian Revolution, Lenin, what he did to overthrow the Tsar, and those kind of things. And that dude was really into propaganda, right? Like, and just he learned a lot from Madison Avenue and marketing, and you know, the posters and all those kind of things. But then when you say, well, that was propaganda, then they're like, no, it's, you know, in I think part of this has to do with my own thing, you know, AI, right? Like there's a thing that runs through is it's not real AI. Well, what do you mean, you know, by real AI? So it's like, you know, my stuff is marketing, my stuff is PR, your stuff is propaganda. It's the same thing. It's just the word we're going to use adds a pejorative to it.
Mm. Mm.
From my side, I've always liked rhetoric, but it also has the pejorative to it. People say, "Oh, that's just rhetoric. Like you're just talking. It's not the truth." So it's like I think of it like I mourn the loss of the old trivium or whatever it was from Greece, where people would be like, "You learn rhetoric because this is what's important, is to convince people what you want. That's important. I think people need to know this, but this goes back to the education issue again."
I think it's very much too with rhetoric. Like in Greece, you had the sophists who, in sophistry, which is where they employ rhetoric simply just to like win. Like when it becomes a trick or a tool that's used, I think again it all comes back to like, well, what is the goal of it, right? Even with rhetoric, I mean, you need to be skilled in rhetoric to have like high level conversation debates with people. But like the alignment, like for me, is always super important. Where it's like an alignment towards some higher good ultimately. Like with the sophists and sophistry, they simply are just employing rhetoric to make money. They just want to be right. They just want to win, which is like Plato and Socrates, and a lot of the other philosophers that followed and also were before Socrates. Like they hated them because they ultimately were just after bettering themselves, not society or civilization or anything else. And then they turned Athens against Socrates and condemned him to death for, you know, polluting the minds of the public, corrupting them. And so, yeah, I think I would agree too, though, man. Yeah, I think it's fine and I think it's okay. But even with you same with propaganda, I think it's all like, what do we align towards? What are we? What is the alignment here? Like, what are our goals? And that's what we need to set out. And I think universal healthcare is an easy one where I mean, I definitely think that you get a strong case here that is it worth employing rhetoric and propaganda to try and fight for that, to have that be implemented? I would absolutely agree. It's a higher good. Yeah.
But higher good is subjective, right? Like, because
could
there
be.
are plenty of people who don't think it's a higher good. Whether they've been propagandized into feeling that way and voting against their own interests, etc., or people who have a financial interest in this system continuing on as it currently exists. So when we're
Mm,
talking about a higher good when it comes to something
mm,
like healthcare, we're talking about percentages, right? Like
mm,
what number of people would benefit from a particular system, and that being the, you know, like the crux of your, I guess, ethical argument around the thing. You know, it's
mm.
going to help 75% of people, ergo it's a greater good. um is that enough, right? Like, or is it 51% or is it 95%? Like, what does it have to be to where
Mm.
we can trick people into giving them health care?
Yeah, you'd have to formulate an argument that would be quite strong, I think, and the argument would have to involve like what is this higher good? And I mean, you know, with universal basic healthcare, it's like, well, then I think the majority of the population does not have the resources necessary to like, you know, pull them out of a hole if they were to get sick. And
So
so then those are
51% is a majority. So that is that
yeah,
sufficient?
yeah. Yeah, so yeah, that would be I guess that'd be part of our argument, and then you could say that those people effectively do all kinds of things that uphold civilization, and then that if they are not able to, if they're not able to get themselves out of that hole financially, they become sick, then you're losing a foundation that otherwise could be there. And you've got people that work the street, lots of jobs people do, like they sweep the streets, they build the homes, they keep the water running, they keep the heat on. And so, well, we can just probably do this right now. I don't know, you can try and formulate an argument for or against it, but like that'd be my argument, Phil. How would we do this? I would say, but this is a problem, I guess, that that's the way to do it. And then you go into a forum, like you go into the, your club equivalent of the House of Commons, and you go and, you argue for, well, this is why I think we should implement it. This is going to be for the betterment of mankind. This is why I think it is. And then see if people are going to give you any time of day and listen to anything and see if you can reason with them, I guess. So, yeah. Is that what you're kind of getting at, Globus? Is that what you want, Globus? Or are you just saying like we should?
Like, honestly, I am a cynic when it comes to things like educating people and reasoning with people and that kind of thing. I think that I want it to be that way. I want to make rational, reasonable arguments in order to convince people and be able to demonstrate, look at these things. And it runs headlong into my reality of people believing stuff which is demonstrably untrue and not seeming to care that it's demonstrably untrue. You know what I mean? So it's like, again, I don't know. I want to trick everyone into giving them health care, and at the same time I'm terrified of authoritarianism. You know what I mean?
We've got to
Would you?
pull those people out of the cave, brother, out of the from the shadows out to the light. Yeah, sorry, Dark.
I was gonna say, would you be against just paying people off for their vote in this case? Like, you're not lying to them. Just be like, hey, you're gonna vote this way. I'm gonna give you $100. Is that like so much better than like convincing them rationally? If we just had enough money to just buy off the electorate.
I mean, honestly, like, I think that buying off the electorate is the most honest way of discussing how politicians lobby votes, right? Like, as opposed to saying, hey, if you vote for me, I'm going to bring jobs and then you're going to get prosperity in your community and everything else. No, I'm just going to give you $1,000 and we'll just do it that way. Like, it's honest in a really weird kind of way.
I mean, it's capitalism. Like, money is truth in some sense here, which is very strange in the United States, but it kind of is. Money is speech.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Ivan, you got anything? You've been quiet for a minute.
I was just I was reading a comment there by Edgewalker. It says the danger with utilitarian arguments and the greater good is that any evil can be justified in service of it. And here you are arguing for lying and manipulating the public for their own good. And yet there is another way called charity, which does not require lying, but virtue of the individual. So I guess the reason I bring that up is sort of it illustrates a philosophical point that every ethical system, if you stick to it like glue, is going to run you into trouble, right? So utilitarianism does have the problem that almost any utilitarian formula you come up with is going to have some adverse side effect. Like, hey, according to utilitarianism, you could take a healthy person, take all their organs and give it to people who need transplants, and you save 20 lives for one. And so we add that up. And so it's better to just whisk people off the street, right? So
Mhm.
you might say that. Or, if you measure utility by average happiness, kill off the unhappy people and raise the average, or
Right.
something like that, right? But then so do things like deontology, like the idea that we should never tell a lie. Well, then when the SS comes to your door and says, "Are you hiding somebody in the attic?" You can't lie to them because it's your principle that you must stick to this principle, or your virtue, like my virtue. I believe that the truth is really important, right? That is something really important to me. But you could put me in a situation where I'm going to have to compromise on that. And so I don't think any of these pure moral positions is correct. They're all
Agreed.
vulnerable to special cases where it's like a no-win scenario and you're just going to have to compromise.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I have 100%. Yeah. Kant or Kant, however you want to pronounce it,
Mhm.
is the deontological ethics, and famously, I don't know. Not a lot of people nowadays are arguing for that. It's more like a lawful good kind of vibe. If anyone's into D&D, but not a lot of wiggle room there. But I guess Edge, to ask Edge a question like, what do you propose? I'm trying to keep up with the comments too. Sorry, it's quite difficult. I'm reading through them as much as I can. But
Yeah, I generally
Yeah.
ignore comments when I'm having panels and just pay attention to the people I'm talking to. But y'all can do as you see fit. Um,
that's a good one now. Yeah.
So my thing is like with that idea, right? Taking it on its face is the idea of charity, right? We can demonstrate that charity isn't effective because it's not working right now. The arguments for charity over like government intervention, which is usually the two sides of that particular coin, is that something needs to happen in order for people to become charitable. If the government just stopped taxing me so much, then I would become charitable or something to that effect. I don't see that demonstrated, like because if the government taxing you less were to lead to that kind of conclusion, then like let's say under that circumstance you would charitably donate $100. Well, why aren't you donating $1 right now? Right? Like why isn't there a percentage of the um that kind of charity driving the healthcare system towards some sort of universality as opposed to what is demonstrated, at least in the United States, is that the people who fall through the cracks are in most need of that charity actually end up getting their bills paid by the state, right? The state does intervene on their behalf because you can go to the emergency room even if you can't pay, and yeah, it might screw your credit and everything else like that, but you can seek medical attention under those circumstances. The charities don't cover that, right? Like it's just not happening.
But insurance, in a sense, is a kind of charity, right? Like
That's a
I'm
bold
paying,
claim.
right? Like I'm
Mm.
I haven't had any expensive surgeries or anything like that, but my health insurance premium for 2026 is $817 a month, right? So, like now, speaking of charity, right? Like if we switch to, if you compare like health government payments to health, for healthcare per capita, Canada versus the USA, the government expense per capita on both sides is about the same. The difference is that in Canada, everybody's covered. In the US, almost everybody is paying extra for private health insurance, including me, right? So if I move to Canada, in theory, I could just say, keep that $817. Like my taxes might go up a bit, but now one of the reasons for that is that profits in Canada are about 0.5%, I think. So it's some really low number for the profits in the healthcare sector. In the US, like it's layer upon layer of like 10, 20%, right? But I wouldn't mind, if my tax bill was going to go up $800, but in exchange for that, everybody was covered, I'd be fine with that. I don't mind. As what is it? There's an H.L. Mencken quote, something like, "I like paying taxes. With them, I buy civilization."
Mm-hmm.
That's good. I would say just to
A
well,
while
not to be
back, there was.
oh, sorry. Go ahead. No.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say to Edge's
Oh, well,
comment
this is-
quickly about yeah. Oh, sorry. We got a bit of a delay. Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I was just going to say quickly because it's kind of relevant to the conversation, I guess, because you just brought it up too, Globus. But that you would appeal to people's virtue. But I mean, that in and of itself too is the virtue of the individual. I mean, that is not everybody is going to be reasonable too. That's a problem, and you're going to be to some degree incapable of reasoning with some of the population. I mean, you would be able to reason with these virtuous individuals, but the problem in reality, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be somewhat unreasonable, and so there's a conundrum, I guess. But yeah, sorry, I just wanted to just say that because he just posted it again too. So that's one of the critiques of something like virtue ethics is that it's wonderful to be able to sit and philosophize all day about ethics, but a lot of people are born in very hard, brutal situations where they don't have that privilege, and it is kind of a privileged position. So then they may grow up in a very different kind of environment and may not be able to come to those conclusions. So then, yeah, it's one of the ethical failings too of virtue ethics, I think. Sorry, but yeah, I'll let you can go ahead.
No, I wasn't gonna say anything important, and that's a good point. That like virtue ethics is always like whatever you are, be a good one at it, which can include being a jerk, like a really good jerk. So, um, you can start off
It
that way.
can be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that is one of the troubles with that theory. No, I was gonna say that not a few years back, some fast food joint put like they said, oh, okay, well, we want to give our people healthcare, but like we don't. It's just expensive, but we'll show the customer how much extra that the whatever little bit of healthcare we're gonna do, and they're gonna put on the receipt, and it came out to something like 16 cents a pizza because it was a pizza place, and it really embarrassed the business because it was like, oh, you were shorting your employees for that 16 cents profit. Like, really, that's what was keeping you from offering any health insurance. And they had to take it off the receipt because it made them look like, money grubbers for not offering health care when it really wasn't that expensive. Granted, this was years ago. So, yeah, if we actually got together, we could make it less bad, but there's you have profits and stock price to worry about.
Hmm.
So, I don't
Yeah.
know.
I mean, to Ivan's point too. Sorry about I mean, maybe just getting into the nitty gritty of like universal healthcare. That one of the issues we struggle with here in Canada, I know, is allocating enough resources where we still struggle to. I mean, we need more money. I think personally is the issue where things do not run efficiently at all. We have an issue right now where people are on waiting lists to see oncologists for a year to 2 years, and by that point, they're dead. Our waiting rooms in our hospitals are abysmal. We just had a guy in Alberta die waiting to see a doctor because he had chest pains. He died of heart attack in the waiting room. So, and people will point to that as like, oh, look, it doesn't work. And I'm like, well, no, I think we we need more money is the issue, I think. But then that gets obviously into a struggle of where's the money going to come from. But I don't think that's necessarily a good argument against it. I think still having that as a fallback is necessary. I personally think it's a human right, but that's what we would get into debating. But there are obviously issues with it, I think, and that would obviously I've been down to the States. You guys have those conversations all the time where I know there are some hospitals, they function kind of more like a business and they run a bit more efficiently. I've had friends who have gone down actually and gotten treatment in American hospitals while they were on a wait list in the Canadian hospitals, and they actually never even got a call back because it wasn't a dire, it was like, oh, I got some mark on my back and maybe it might be cancerous. And so like, well, we might get you in with, a whatever skin doctor, a dermatologist, or we might not. So they go down and just get it cut off and pay the money. But obviously, not everyone has the money to be able to do that. But sorry, that's one of the here in Canada. There's these debates are raging all the time, and currently are, because we're short nurses. And we're not compensating them enough, I guess, and so no one wants to be a nurse. Anyway, there's all kinds of issues, but that's kind of maybe beside the point. But it may be in creating some kind of a propagandist argument for universal healthcare. I mean, you have to understand maybe the ups and downs, like to play devil's advocate too on like the issues with it. Maybe.
Well, I think that's actually a good point. So like one of the a great example of propaganda, however you feel about it, is the United States and its nationalist ideas of service, right, and the romanticization of the soldier and these kind of things. Can you make within the framework of providing universal health care, as an example, make a propagandistic argument to say that being a nurse is part of like your national duty, and
Oh, easy, man, easy.
then that
Good.
appeals to people who feel a certain way about like the United States and its
Just make all nurses part of the Veterans Association, because the giant VA thing, and because that's the military healthcare system.
Mhm.
Now, not saying that works well in this country, but I'm just saying you could just put it under the military umbrella and militarize the whole thing, and then all of a sudden, becoming a nurse is now a national point of pride because you're joining the military. I mean, all these things are doable given the sort of will, but it's like that's fanciful. But like as far as rhetoric goes, I can do that in a second.
But
Yeah.
can
I
you
guess should we?
Yeah,
You're right. Can you
Let's do it,
appeal
yeah.
to
Powerful,
that idea of patriotism, and that as Americans, the broad American, people
Victory
understand
Gardens.
it? Yeah, victory gardens, right? Like that kind of thing.
Mm. Yeah. No, I was just gonna. I mean, just to talk about the ethics of some of those decisions. I've told this story before to people on my chat, but this is it's maybe kind of a smaller scale example. But the guy I studied under, my philosophy professor, was an ethicist at our local hospital, and he had an issue that I believe he was involved with the issues. This is an example, but I'm assuming he was the one to make the decision, where a man came in with HIV, and all the nurses in the operating room refused to operate on him because they were scared. And a decision had to be made by the hospital to threaten their jobs to go and operate on him. And I believe that's what they did. They said essentially, if you refuse to operate on him, you will be done working here. And so sometimes, again, was that an ethical thing to do? I mean, that's obviously like a smaller scale situation, but like we scale that up into maybe under your example, Nogur, where you're saying like, well, we could maybe nationalize and maybe part of the military. If you're in a dilemma where no one's becoming nurses and people are not able to get healthcare anymore, and you have universal free healthcare, I mean, maybe you'd have to implement something. This is like the greater good kind of argument too. I mean, that's we have to kind of get back to, but yeah. So
We've had various over the years different like sort of programs. Like I remember during the Obama years, they were gonna say I forget what it's called, because first thing that goes when I'm streaming is word recall. But it's like they was gonna make some sort of like national civic service. And they were gonna talk about this. It never materialized. But there's been these sorts of ideas of having some sort of patriotic service program where the government's gonna, you work for, like, you're gonna go volunteer and they're gonna give you like a token pay or something to go work for the country for a few years or whatever it is. And I mean, it's yeah, these things have come and gone, and I don't know of anything right now. But I mean, I was just thinking about ICE today as a welfare program for disenfranchised military cosplayers, and it's like I'm sorry,
That is much more complimentary than I would have put it.
yes.
But like, okay, so these programs, like, because I remember that there was like a Job Corps program that some people did, and these kind of things. Do they come and go because we're not interested in funding them, or do they come and go because we as Americans, sorry, Jim, are not interested in having them? Right? Because like when we want something bad enough, we seem to have it.
Cough, Greenland, cough. Sorry. Um,
No, well, I mean, I kind of agree with Tiny Spider down, so that we should just pay people more money.
Yeah.
If it costs what it costs, so let's pay them what the job is worth. Like, I mean, I'm not saying we can't, use propaganda to make the if we're paying people the right wages and you want to use propaganda or public relations to help get more people into that line of work, that's cool. But I don't think that we should just pay people dirt and then use propaganda to make up the difference, right?
Mm.
but in some sense, I think propaganda always makes up the difference. Like it's always there, as I said, like at the start. You know, if it's only money, people do not. You don't eat money. Like you, granted, you can buy food with money, but like there is something to it. Like there is always some. You still have to tell yourself a story, because this sort of discussion made me think of "Thank You for Smoking," the movie, which is about propaganda and rhetoric. And you always say, well, you got to pay rent somehow, but part of the argument against him was like, you can pay rent a lot of ways. Like there's not one way to just make your money. You're not only like you're not so simplistic that you have to do the one thing. You could do other stuff and still get paid. And I like that point because people still have to justify whatever they're doing to themselves. If you're just going for the paycheck, cool, but like if you're only there for, I have friends in finance, I'm in the New York City area, like so many of them, they're like, once they get in it, they thought it was cool, and then they're like, I am just making enough, I'm getting out, and I'm going to do something else with myself, because it's not a fun job usually. So it's like you still need a story to be telling yourself at the end of the day.
I guess into Tiny Spider's comment, like, can you afford to pay them appropriately? I mean, look at the price of food right now with inflation. I mean, what should people be paying? What is an affordable wage right now? Can we afford to pay them that? I guess maybe if we go after some of these more billionaires keeping all the money offshore, we'd have more money to play with, right? At least the federal government here in Canada, but they don't really seem too keen on doing that, turning over those rocks. So, that might be another limiting factor.
Well, I mean, I think we can find money in, if we were to just keep the US budget the way it is and just reallocate the spending, we could do it. Right.
Yeah,
True, but
I don't know that much about the Canadian budget, but in the United States,
we're a little bit more strapped. We don't have we can't cut out a couple destroyers and aircraft carriers, and
but that's really like that's another place where propaganda falls into place, is the idea that that the United States not only needs a strong military, but they need this strong military on the level that they have to pay $1 trillion a year in order to have it. And there are a significant number of people who feel that that is in fact the case. And how do you convince those people who are not arriving at that idea necessarily through, rational, contemplative, self-reflective thought about the idea, but are more, attuned to, we have to defend ourselves against terrorists and the bad guys, et cetera, et cetera. So how do you appeal to those people in order to help make that change, to have one less aircraft carrier and pay for universal health care kind of thing?
fear.
Get a better boogeyman.
Fear will keep
that's
in mind.
it. I mean, I mean, whether it's real or not, right? That's the thing. But I mean, to some degree, that's what's been used. I mean, yeah. So it's could we use that to further these goals? I mean, that's yeah. It's
I think no. Here's what we should do. We should convince people to like price estimate. Like a universal healthcare costs less than the system we have today.
Mhm.
Like probably at least 33% less. And so you could easily like take those savings and build 2 more aircraft carriers.
mm. Yeah, I personally think that although some people are less optimistic, I do think that most people can be reasoned with to some degree. And I think to Ivan's point, I think if someone really got like a good argument together, right, that's able to be communicated to people who don't have all the time in the day to sit and, pick something really complicated apart, I think it could be that simple. But it's interesting that I guess in your guys' case, has anyone ever really done that? Or they've tried, I'm assuming, right? With, like, Obamacare, although I don't think that really panned out very well, but
No, and this is again, this is my frustration with the entire thing. When you look at propaganda, here's a great example. Lock her up. The three beats chant, right? It happens in sports, it happens in politics. It's something that people easily digest and are able to regurgitate and participate in the group event. Lock her up.
mm,
Fuck Joe Biden, all these kind of things. Let's go Sabres, right? Like it's just that kind of thing. And left, liberal, progressive, whatever, people who aren't those people don't have that, right? And therefore, like, I feel like there's something missing there, that like there's an opportunity to tap into something, but you have to be able to reduce something like, again, Bernie Sanders, he's going to come out, he's going to give you a 20-minute speech on why universal health care is, the way to go and it's cheaper and all these things. But
mm,
he's got charts and diagrams and it's 20 minutes and, like half the audience tuned out after like 2 minutes,
it's too much, yeah.
right? But if you can
Yeah.
hit people with like tax the rich or they are weird, right? Those kind of things really seem to hit for the
Mhm.
moments in time that they're there.
This was one of my great disappointments with Elon Musk was that he had the Doge, the Department of Governmental Efficiency, and
Mm,
imagine he actually did something useful with that. Like
Hmm.
it's like, yeah, imagine like that would have actually been cool, but like that, like in a different world, a very, very, very different world. Like imagine that actually was, cutting all the middlemen out of say it gave us universal healthcare, cut us all the middlemen out of the healthcare industry. Like there's your efficiency for you. It could work. It's just not going to. You need billionaires funding this in some sense to get everyone behind it. And maybe that's part of the problem is there's no big bucks to be made in getting universal, like there's no one person going to be a billionaire off the universal healthcare. There's plenty of billionaires off the privatized industry at the moment.
mm,
The one thing, well, I guess this is not the about the propaganda question, right? But there was this when Bernie Sanders was running, there was this big debate about healthcare, and people, because he was running against Hillary, they were like, or Joe Biden. There was this sort of debate about whether um, Medicare for all those who want it is good enough, and a lot of people that I heard on the left were saying like, no, it's too much of a compromise. But if the US switched to universal healthcare overnight, like millions of Americans would go out of jobs immediately. And then the policy would be immediately reversed. Right? It's just,
mm,
it kind of has to be, there's so much money and activity in that sector that it couldn't just be switched right away. It is something that has to go like a piece at a time. And I think that we should just give people the choice. Like, yeah, you have the option. You don't have to have universal health care. You could sign up for Medicare for all. And if you don't, if you prefer to pay an extra $600 a month, go ahead. But like there's a huge economic opportunity in taking all that money we spend on private healthcare and putting it towards something else, whether it's research and development or buying back your own stock. Just I would like I don't it, yeah if I wouldn't get my own private room in a hospital. Maybe it would take me longer to go find a doctor or something, but for $800 a month, maybe it's okay. It's a worthwhile trade-off. I don't know.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Well, okay, so when you involve, and maybe this is too far off of what you're talking about, but so part of the ACA was that everyone had to have it in order to offset, like you said earlier, like you don't use healthcare as much as you pay into it, and other people need that what you've paid in order to pay off, what they need. And that was part of the ACA, is that everyone had to have something, so that because it was done through the insurance company, it created that risk pool so that they had the money in order to pay for the people who were actually using it. And the removal of those kind of things, and then the removal of the subsidies have led us down, to where we are today. So in a Medicaid for those who want it type system, are you going to get sufficient money into that system in order to pay for those people who are going to use that system? You know what I mean? Or do you have to increase taxes? And if you're increasing taxes, now you have to do a propaganda campaign around increasing taxes, because increasing taxes is like this huge dilemma. But if you say, I'm going to cut your taxes, then nobody asks any real questions.
Well, for the ACA, doesn't insure everyone, right? It's an opt-in system. So there are still many people who are uninsured. There are still people buying private health insurance in other ways. What the ACA does is it says that the insurance companies must cover everyone who applies at the same price based on their age, whether they smoke, and their sex. So it is about pooling, but it's not demanding that everybody in the country be in the pool. It's still like it's a minority of people are in the ACA, and there's people who are not in the pool at all, which is another factor, right? One of the things that people forget is, insurance is it's supposed to be like a free market, right? The problem is that if you don't have insurance, we're going to bail you out anyway, because if you go to the emergency room, we're going to give you treatment, right? So you can't really have a free market in that sense. So it's a fair question, right? Whether having, expanding Medicare to everyone at the current premium prices would be practical or not. But I think that would be the way to do it, right? Like allow people, like expand that pool. Like right now, to get to access Medicare, I think you have to be 65. Well, let's do it to step it up by 5 years. So 60-year-olds, and then 55-year-olds, and so on, and like expand it in a progressive way, something like that. I do think that it would be better if I could snap my fingers and change everybody over to like the national health system in the UK, then I would do that. But I think it's politically very difficult to make that transition all at once.
I guess here's a question for you guys that I think Digi brought up earlier, but about like a universal healthcare system like the NHS or the healthcare system here in Canada. What do you guys think about um, people who are a drain on the system? Do you guys think that is a problem? Would be a problem? That's a debate that we have here all the time in Canada. Now, my argument usually is proportion of those people are very small, but there is an issue as with growing aging populations in Canada where, there's all these other the obesity crisis, which is plaguing all of North America, or smoking, which is lesser of a problem now, but just people generally being in poor health and how that impacts a system, a shared system, and how other people are taking the burden of that. So that's a debate that I am adding. Yeah, I'll bring up your question. That's a debate that's brought up here a lot. Is, well, why, in terms of like an ethical conversation around like essentially like a universal healthcare, be like, well, why should I pay for this guy who smokes all day and drinks all day and is in and into the hospital every week? I mean, and that's I've had those conversations before. What do you guys think about that?
I think that question is a excellent example of how effective propaganda is. Because when you talk about we're going to have a system where everyone's going to be able to go to the hospital. Immediately, someone's like, well, what about that guy who doesn't deserve it for whatever reason? Right? And that is an internal propaganda that we have, it came from external, whether it's, Protestant work ethic or any of that kind of stuff, but then it's internalized and then we use that to, to like police our own thoughts and police our own language and that kind of thing. I when it comes to things like food, right? Like there's the argument that well, people have to work in order to get food, otherwise you're taking from the people who have worked to make the food, etc. I don't care. Like, people should eat. People should have access to food, regardless of their ability to work for it or anything else. Every other system that doesn't do that is prone to a different kind of violence, a different kind of force. And so, in that same regard, yeah, I mean, I understand how the argument of, so should someone who has smoked get a lung transplant, the appeal of that kind of argument. I just don't, like you said, it's a very small number of people and I don't care, right? Like, yes, they absolutely should get a lung transplant. Everyone who needs a lung transplant should get a lung transplant. And that's the beginning and the end of the conversation.
I guess, well, I'll play devil's advocate though, but if there are instances, I guess, where people do have to make decisions, right? Where it comes down to someone getting one or not getting one. And I guess in that, for instance, in Canada, I think if someone is a smoker and they apply for a lung transplant and there's someone who's not a smoker and they apply for one, they won't give it to the person who's been smoking. They give priority to the person who
Mhm.
has not been a smoker. But again, I agree with you on that too, there, Columbus, where I think it's like my whole thing with it, because this is, I've had many debates with people about this over the years too, about the ethics of universal healthcare. And, I think for people that are we have a problem with obesity in the country, if we have a problem with people smoking or drinking, I think, again, maybe naively so, I think education is usually the solution to a lot of these problems. And I think we're just not allocating enough resources to educating people properly. But then, again, there are realities where, and now again, they are a smaller proportion comparatively to the rest of Canadians, but there are people who do drain the system. But again, it's like I do think sometimes that is people honing in on that and trying to, at the end of the day, I think it's a human right personally. So anyway, but there are realities where
Yeah.
sometimes you have to get into the weeds on it a little bit. But yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely details here, but like we were saying, like Globus was saying earlier, other people, we're paying for these people anyway. It's like, well,
Mm.
what's the best way to pay for the drains on the system? Because you're always going to have free riders in all systems. Someone's going to find a way. I mean, this is not even a modern problem. There's always been free riders, that people who abuse the commons. It's called the tragedy of the commons from back in the day. And it's like, there was a common field and some people would take more than they needed, and then they'd have more, and then it would be less for everyone who was like using it in the sort of proper amount. And this is a problem with its current problem with insurance. And it's like, so it's, we're still paying for the jerks. It's just, and so what I don't like about these arguments about, like, well, what's that guy who doesn't deserve it? It's like, yeah, we were still dealing with it. What's the alternative? How are we paying for it today? Show me the null case. Show me how much we're spending on this jerk right now, and how much would we be spending on the jerk given universal health care. Maybe that person would be better off and have a less bad outcome if they had better care over time. And so it's real hard because it's not like we have these numbers. I like, how would we know what the U.S. would look like with universal healthcare right now? We don't have this sort of thing. So it's all sort of in people's heads, going to the back to the propaganda sort of angle here. We don't know what it's going to do. And like was said, it's projected that we're going to save a third if we had universal healthcare here. But like, again, because it's a projection, it's again subject to the propagandizing, where it's like, well, you don't know that, but you're gonna have bad healthcare. It's like, shut the fuck up. But like, yes, it'd be better if we did. But again, it's going back to this issue.
So there's this question of
It's
what they call moral hazard, right? Like you implement a policy, and then that change alters the behavior of people, right? But in the United States, so by the way, for the $817 a month that I pay, right, my deductible is about $10,000. So if I end up in the hospital for even one night, I'm down like 10 grand, right? How much does this affect my working out, right? My fitness regime? Not at all. No, nor do I don't think people are deciding whether to smoke, whether to eat extra pizza, etc., based on based on the projected healthcare costs, right? I don't think that's happening, and I don't think that if they had universal healthcare, that they suddenly go, oh, I can start eating more pizza, and I'm gonna quit going to the gym. Like, that's not part of that equation. So I don't think that, you could say, well, that person didn't take care of themselves, I don't want to pay for that, but you're paying for it now. So like when you pay health insurance here, you have to pay to keep the hospital running, and the hospital's paying to do that, that surgery on that patient anyway. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that is, I, and again, just that idea that it's often referred to as crabs in a bucket, right? Like that, we tend to pull each other down in that regard. Um, and again, that's the kind of propaganda that exists on like a background noise level that we exist in. And how do you counter that if not with different propaganda? Because like I can't say I'm particularly well educated within the educational system, but like I've learned a lot, and I've had a variety of different jobs and a variety of different books that I've read and a variety of different intelligent people that I've got to have conversations with, and like where I can make my arguments and they attack my arguments, but we do it in a place where, like where we're both trying to head in the same general direction, this kind of thing. And still, like, I am aware of that propaganda, like the fact that Jim used the term, and this is not an attack, Jim, the drain on the system, right? Like using that terminology. This is a human being who needs services. You know what I mean? Like they need stuff. People need food. They need housing. They need healthcare in order to not die. And when we look at that, the fact that when we refer to somebody like that as a drain on the system, it shows you these layers and layers of propaganda that we're not even aware of that they exist. Like anytime you start peeling back layers of white supremacy or layers of patriarchy or any of these kind of things, you see how those kind of things are there all the time. And while education has its place, don't get me wrong, propaganda, I think, can have a more immediate effect. Did we lose Noah? Or did they just turn it off for a second? Um, do you disagree? Am I way off base? Any of you?
I mean, I agree that it's sort of an anti-compassionate phrase in and of itself,
Mm.
right? It says that people don't deserve compassion. It's you should like when you say drain on the system, it sounds like a waste of air, right? Or something like
Mm.
that. And it's subtle, but like it's sort of in there. So I do agree. I think one place where there's missing propaganda on the left, at least, has to do with identity and having a positive vision of the future.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the left is often very critical. Like it's part of like the sort of liberal or progressive agenda is to critique things that they think are not right, to critique actions that have been taken in the past that were wrong. And all of those, I agree that we should do that. But I also think like that if we focus exclusively on that, then that it deprives us of another kind of message, like of having a positive vision of what we want to create.
Yeah,
And I feel like that doesn't get done very much on the left.
to like what Noah was saying earlier about this person is a drain on the system either way, but is it better under the other system? Like we and I agree. Like the left um and I think that has a lot to do with, again, what I'm trying to accomplish here is this idea of like there's doom, and everything's on fire and the fascists are winning and all this stuff, and the capitalists and the billionaires and the system, and in that doomerism that exists prevents us from like taking action, right? I know I'm probably the most left out of all of you as far as I'm aware of. I think most of you are more towards the liberal side and I'm more radical. Um, but within that, like, it is like I hear it a lot. It's like, again, talking about AI, is this idea that we can't have the AI until, we've gotten rid of capitalism, because capitalism is the problem with AI. And fair enough, but like where are we on that particular project, right? And what is your vision that gets us from here to there? Over the course of this conversation, various ideas have come up about, we should just shift where we're spending money and we should do that. And that sounds great. But like the steps between where we live today and the point at which we could convince the United States government to take one less aircraft carrier and turn that into one more healthcare is like we are so far away from that. So how
Mm.
do we get from here to there? And again, to me, it all starts with the propaganda.
Mm. Yeah,
I
possibly.
mean, I completely agree actually with that point, Globus. It's like I was saying, we could do it very easily if, like, all of a sudden everybody was in part of the VA, it was a military thing, and like, oh yeah, more military spending. It just wouldn't be for an aircraft carrier, it would just be more spending on military personnel who all happen to now be nurses. I was thinking
Mm.
earlier before I mistyped and closed my window. Most of the healthcare costs are a huge amount of healthcare costs are end of life care for people at the end of life, just holding on for a few more months, a few more years, a few more days. Sometimes it's like these are the drains on the system. Your grandparents are the drains on the system. You're the people that have built this country are the drains on the system. It's like, yeah, it's maybe we need more exposure to really who are you talking about? Is your grandma that is causing the problem here? Are you going to give up your grandma? It's like no one's giving up their grandma. That's not happening. So it is definitely a perception issue on a lot of these. It's just it is a who are we talking about really? So
Yeah, I think it's generally a compassionless approach. Even if they point to statistics about, obesity or, people needing dialysis or, diabetes or whatever. But yeah, that's generally my take on it too. That I think it's kind of a compassion. I don't think that's a precedent we want to set, honestly, in our civilization. But it's kind of already been set. I mean, yeah, and I mean, even about, I mean, there are these. I'll bring up other arguments, like for instance, against not you guys are in the States, obviously, but against lowering the spending in the military. That some people make the argument that we need to spend as much as possible in the military because that's what has maintained this order in the world, right? This dominance of the U.S. and the American dollar as well depends on that to some degree. Some people argue, and so if we start pulling back, if we take that one aircraft carrier off the fleet, then that might kind of shake up things on a global scale, and yeah, we might be able to allocate more resources. I've heard these arguments before that we might be able to allocate some more resources to people who are sick or need better education, but is that not the excuse that they use down there to continue justifying the spending? I think it is, isn't it?
Yes.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Mm. And I mean, I guess the world order is shifting regardless right now. I mean, that
Yeah.
thanks
Yeah.
to Don, but but yeah.
Yeah. So, getting back to something I was saying that I think is missing. I think one thing that the right does quite well is appeal to identity, something I call aspirational identity, right? Something that makes people feel proud in a way that I think most kinds of secular identity on the left don't. So when you ask someone what their identity is if they're secular, they'll tell you descriptive facts about themselves, like which party they voted for, or what they might say, what their epistemic beliefs about the world are. They might say this is my ethnic background, or this is my job. But I think that if you are religious or if you're on the right, then your identity is going to be something that you aspire to be better at. So, I think that Trump talks about, and the Republicans talk about American identity that just says, you should be proud to be an American no matter what, no matter what happened in the past or no matter what we're doing in the presently, etc. And that people, it's a very simple message. What does it mean? What do I do to embrace being an American? Well, I'm going to celebrate American holidays, and I'm going to have barbecues and watch some sports and buy a big truck or something like that, right? Something simple. I think that the left doesn't really have that. There are people who might say, well, I identify as having a particular kind of political ideology. But do you have that ideology because is it something that you want to make yourself better, or is it just a belief that you think that's the best system? Because if it is, then that's not really an identity. I feel like an identity should be based in something that's not utilitarian, right? So it's not. So the example that I often give on stream is, why should we oppose misinformation about, let's say, vaccines and climate change? the secular answer to that, like the answer you probably have in your mind, is if people have faulty beliefs about vaccines and climate change, people will die needlessly of disease or of geopolitical conflict or of rising sea levels or storms or something like that, which are great reasons to oppose misinformation about climate change and vaccines. But there's another reason, which is that spreading misinformation about hard-won scientific knowledge is just intrinsically wrong. It's profane. And that you can build an identity around, right? Like it feels different than just doing a utilitarian calculation. And I feel like the left isn't really doing much in that area. Like secular people aren't building that kind of identity. But I think that that would be, if you want to deploy some sort of propaganda, that's the direction to go in, rather than just using some sort of pointing out some sort of utilitarian fact about the system. Like I think the utilitarian angle, like we have that covered, right?
Mm.
I don't think, I think the American system is in almost every measurable way the worst system in the developed world, right? We have the lowest life expectancy at the highest cost.
I was flying into the U.S. From Europe, and there was a guy from Europe flying in. He was using the in-flight like screen to look at tourist things in New York, and I was just like, "Oh God, these are terrible." And he's like, "Oh, you're from New York?" I'm like, "Yes." I was trying to tell him, and then we were flying in. I was like, "Welcome to the stupidest place on the face of the earth." And it's like, yeah. I mean, maybe New York is also great, but it is also the stupidest. So, but yes, but I mean, to your point, it's like you're going for an aspirational identity, which again is going to be some sort of narrative that people tell about their lives. It's not the external goals, as you were saying. It's an internal narrative about who I am and what I am up to. And like, yeah, it's like, yeah. And to that, like, that's a good point. Like, people need to be able to tell something about themselves and think about what kind of person they want to be
And
along those lines. Yeah.
so within that framework, you need something that you can, you know, say about yourself, your aspirational identity, but also that allows you to exist within a group, right? Like you need a bunch of people in order to um in order to make change, right? Like to Jim's point, one vote, nothing. 10,000 votes in Georgia changes an election, right? Like that kind of thing. So, how do you form an aspirational identity through some sort of cultural narrative that you can use to both identify yourself but also identify with a greater group? Like, can you provide an example of what that would look like, something concrete?
My own view is like take any specific. I mean, I don't know what the sort of overarching narrative looks like, but if you think about, for example, voting, right? As Jim said, from a utilitarian perspective, if you go like, well, it's going to cost me this much time to go to the voting booth, what is the probability that my vote is the deciding vote? It's very small. So from a utilitarian perspective, I shouldn't go and vote, because the probability is like the cost benefit is just not there, right? But I think that the way to think about where do you get aspirational identity is to put it in virtue terms and ask, like, how can I think about this in a way that is non-utilitarian but aligns with what I think is correct? And you just sort of say, like, I am the kind of person who thinks that voting is important, like just intrinsically important. It's that utilitarian, that it doesn't, the utility doesn't matter, right? That I think there are many, almost anything. In other words, I guess what I would ask people to do is look at your existing set of beliefs and sort of political commitments, whatever policy things you align with. And I'm not saying that we can escape from utility. we shouldn't, like, the last thing you want is for something like an idea like voting or fighting misinformation to get out of hand and start costing people's lives, right? Something that's anti-utilitarian is bad. So I'm not saying we should avoid utility. What I'm saying is take the utilitarian decisions you're making today and recast them in terms of virtues. Like,
Mm.
imagine a situation where the cost benefit seems to fall low, but you still think it's the right thing to do. And voting is one of those things.
I think it's very well said, Ivan. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the Globus, your point though, like I guess to the general public, is that something that can be communicated to them? I mean, will they be able to? Will that motivate them to go and vote? Right. I mean, and then maybe is that where propaganda steps in, where it's just a simple message may be enough to encourage them. I would agree too, Ivan. I mean, that's how I would. That's what I tell myself, I guess. But yeah, no, again, I think, but then I guess the propaganda comes in where are people going to look at it like that? How do you get people out who are not going to be willing to critically think about that, critically think about the importance of voting? Do they simply just need a buzzword to get them out onto the streets? And I mean, that's maybe a bit more of a kind of nihilistic approach to it, but I mean, maybe there is a reality there where you still do need that propaganda in place. You could or you could call it a narrative, but propaganda, definitionally propaganda, maybe that's still a necessity just to facilitate the actual act of all these people going out and doing this, who aren't going to be willing to like introspectively look at, well, why should I be doing this? It's just something I do. It's just something I have to do. I would encourage people, to think more critically about it. Yeah. And that it's a virtuous thing to do. But yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
I mean,
I
we
think
used to have the
go ahead.
idea of civic duty.
Yeah.
Yeah, civic duty used to be a thing, and I think a lot of people in power spent a lot of time trying to convince us that it was bad, and I think that was part of the propaganda. It's like it's not that hard to go vote. It really isn't. Although they've made it a lot harder, but I mean, there's a lot of places voting by mail. It takes 5 seconds. You fill out a form, you put it in your mailbox. That's it. It's like they want to take that away, of course.
But is that like, and how would how do you form an aspirational identity that is also a group identity that appeals to other people? Because that's what we're fundamentally talking about, right? Like, in order to have any kind of political power, you need a group. And in order, from drawing off what Ivan said, to have a positive outlook, right? You need this aspirational identity. So what would it look like to have an aspirational identity that is also an aspirational group identity?
I think it's important. Like, I don't think there's a one size fits all answer. Like, I, but the thing I want to draw attention to is that I think that in secular communities, this kind of thing doesn't really exist.
Can it
In other
exist,
words,
or is it
I
like
think
environmentally incapable of existing?
To me, it seems strange that it doesn't exist. Right. Like, in other words, I can't put my finger on why it doesn't, except to say maybe we tend, progressive and secular people tend to be suspicious of certain kinds of narratives. We tend to be suspicious of things that are not like strictly justifiable in utilitarian terms, maybe. And so maybe that's a reason why secular people generally don't cling to those kind of things, don't cleave to that. But I don't see any reason why in principle you can't do it. But I also feel like, let's suppose that there were 3 different groups. There are multiple, like,
Red Sox, Yankees, Chicago Cubs.
right, or like Democratic Party, DSA, and something else, right? But like, imagine that they're going to craft their own aspirational identity, and it's still an American identity, right? Like, I was very patriotic when I was in high school. Right? America was very different then. Like, in many ways, there was more discrimination when I was in school. But I wasn't patriotic because I believed in that discrimination. I was patriotic because I believed in certain principles that I saw as American, right? But we've sort of let the other side walk away with the flag. I think that if you talk to mainstream politicians, they'll deny that they've walked away from it. But I think that on we have this when you look around, like I'm also a humanist, right? So you say, oh well, what is humanism about? Well, it's about critical thinking. It's about believing in the natural world and thinking that humans have to solve their own problems. But it's also sort of valuing humanity. And it's difficult when you look at humanity sometimes to be like, that's cool, right? Because there's a lot of humanity does a lot of bad stuff. But I think that you have to find a way to imagine the best in humanity, right? Imagine the best in America. And that is a thing that's worth envisioning and celebrating. And I think that's difficult, especially on the left today. Like they don't want to do it, and there's good reason to think that the United States has done bad stuff in its history, right? I mean, many nations have, but the United States has done some very definitive ones, and a lot of people don't want to look at it.
Yeah, I find that very strange. Not to interrupt,
Yeah.
Ivan, but yeah,
Yeah.
I'm obviously up here in the north, but I've noticed that as well. I mean, I noticed that in the university system as well, where 15 years ago now, but there was kind of like the liberal arts. They were very much focusing in on, like obviously the slave trade and the founding fathers, obviously a lot of kind of more right wing conservative figures or schizo conservative figures like Alex Jones, Ray But the, founding fathers and Paul Revere. Some of those guys weren't like the greatest guys. And I think that comes down to also the complicated, how complicated human beings can be, where some of those guys did do good and they did do bad, right? And it's a complicated so how complicated people can be as well. I know they're pulling down these statues of like George Washington and some of the other foundational figures there, and how there's been this obviously people against American imperialism and disgusted at the world policing that the United States has done. But I would agree as well. I think you can still be patriotic, and there's still lots of great things that have been done. And I don't understand that refusal to acknowledge, or it's just that no refusal to associate, or I don't get it either. Honestly, I think there's tons of positives, and yeah, I've also kind of been at a loss to understand why that isn't a thing, I guess, on the left, or hasn't been, I guess, in some time, maybe.
Noah?
I'm thinking, I don't know. Like I was saying, we have like I'm from the New York City area. I mean they did a study, what baseball team are you going to root for? They found it to be a direct function of distance to the stadium. So the line between Yankee fan and Boston fans is the exact line between where the stadiums are. Those are secular things, although actually I'm not sure it is for Boston people. That's pretty religious. But like there are aspirational things going on, like people root for their sports teams, they treat that as a kind of religion, and there are morals associated with those teams, and it's hard being a fan in nowadays too, because you do hear about all the terrible things that's going on with those people. A lot of them are not great people. They spent their whole life doing sports and maybe nothing else, and they don't know about society. And we have plenty of sports figures who are embezzling money and things like that, and it's not great. um but it's like someone was commenting, you have to be a fan of the team or a fan of like the ideals. And so these things do exist, but again, they tend to be co-opted by the right, the people on the right, because I guess it's just more in line with that. But there's no reason why you couldn't be a secular sports fan and embrace the notion of service and things like that to your community. So
Mm.
it yeah, it's harder. I think it is harder, because if you're going to be a realist about this, these are just people. They have all the foibles, as you were just saying, Jim, about like the founding fathers. It's like, and it's hard. It's easy when you're an idealist to just blindly go forward. and I've heard this about people who've been in like very strict religious communities. Like you had an absolute sense of like value and worth because you knew God was on your side and you had to go do this, and you were able to do like amazing things because you just were not thinking about all the crap that actually was going on. But it's like you do get that. It's like that blind faith. It's a drug. It helps you. It can, or at least.
Hmm.
So I don't know if we have drugs on the left like that.
Sorry, I'm trying
Well,
to
I guess.
shout out
Yeah,
Jim
sorry.
and not working for.
Oh, don't worry. We're live right now, brothers. All right. Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna say, I guess the left is usually more leaning towards drugs anyway, right? Like other funner drugs, like actual fun things. Yeah.
The spice
Yeah,
melange.
Yeah. Spice
one of the
melange.
things one of the things I've started to I believe this now is like the right wing folks are unbelievably idealistic. They accuse the left of it, but I find the people on the right, they have this very sort of simplistic view, and it's not bad to be simplistic. Like you can say like certain things are wrong and like full stop, and that's like a simple thing. Like don't be murdering people, it's wrong. But like the view of the world that these folks have a lot of times is just like so idealistic about, oh yeah, like we're just gonna go do this rah rah rah. It's like I can't do that anymore. It's like I can't just sort of believe that like America is all good because I know some of the history. And so it's harder in some sense if you're going to be a little bit more clear-eyed about how people are and what like actually motivates these movements. It's like, well, it's going to be messy.
Mm.
So, we've hit the 2-hour mark. I unfortunately have stuff to do. I had a wonderful time. I hope y'all did as well.
Absolutely.
Did anyone have a
Yeah,
bad time?
No.
No, but who won?
I did because I got all of you in one place at the same time, and that
The
is
viewers won.
the viewers
Yeah.
always.
Yeah.
So, to chat, you should follow all these people. They are some of my favorite people to hang out with. They are smart, they are funny, they are entertaining, and they have good stuff to say. And to paraphrase Noah, as long as you're not an asshole, they're willing to tolerate your argument. You know what I mean?
As long as you come in good faith. Yeah, that's all we
Exactly.
ask. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I hope we can do this again. Does anyone have anything they wanted to say before I shut us down for the evening?
I just thank you very much, guys, for coming and having
Thank you.
conversation. That's
Yes,
what I
thank you.
look for. I'm glad that we're able to do this now on Twitch. This is a very cool feature.
Yeah.
I appreciate it a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Globus. Thanks, Ivan, and thanks, Jim.
Thanks.
Absolutely,
Thank you so
my
much,
pleasure.
guys.
Y'all take
All
care.
right. Take care, guys.
All right, folks. I hope you enjoyed that experience outside of the normal AI content. I will be back. When will I be back? When will I be back to talk about AI? Looks like Tuesday. I will be back Tuesday. I love doing this. Straight dope. This is one of my my favorite things to do is to have on people and talk about ideas. And like that. I am going funded ethic now. I want ethics now. I want answers to all the problems now. Or we're gonna raid Jim, because that's usually what you do in these kind of scenarios. I will be back Tuesday to talk about AI. We will see about episode 4 of the Propagandists and have some more people on to talk about things. And I appreciate all of you. You've been wonderful. I've been Globus. In the meantime, drink your water, eat some food, take your meds if you forgot, and always remember that Shuggy loves you. So do I. Be great.